Hey guys, CJ here. I'm just gonna, take a moment, interrupt your regularly scheduled broadcast to bring you some breaking news. We're going to do a 4,000 subscriber contest this Sunday, February 2nd. Look out for that video. We got something really special planned for you. We haven't done as many of these subscriber contests as we've wanted to in the past. 1,000 subscribers. I think the last one we did was 1,000, but we got something really, really special planned for you in celebration of this momentous time of change for us, as well as the channel. And anyways, we really look forward to seeing you there and giving back to you guys a little bit. So please join us Sunday, February the 2nd for our subscriber contest. You could win some really cool prizes. We've got something really cool planned for you guys for the winner of that contest, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm gonna be jealous of the lucky winner. But anyways, signing off, this is CJ. Please enjoy your regularly scheduled video.
Hey guys, Hybrid here with another screenplay, this one being Batman, subtitled Gotham Knight. Now, just in case you don't know, this takes place after the Justice League one, and it takes place obviously after the first Batman one titled Dark Detective. Now, a lot of people give me feedback on that, saying I was very dark and brutal with it, which was my intent, so I'm happy that it came off that way. But this one isn't as dark as that one. Probably the other Batman ones I'm making will be darker, but this one won't be. I also, just for people, because I know certain people want me to kind of like summarize what they can expect in this one before they listen to it. I'm not going to give everything away, but Robin's introduced, the villain's Penguin, and that's all I'm going to say for right now. The rest of it, you're going to have to listen and find out. So this may be longer. Obviously, all of my screenplays average around 20 minutes to half an hour, usually around half an hour, more than 20 minutes. This one might be a little bit more than half an hour. Obviously, you can tell by the time I upload this, but just because I wrote a lot for this. I wrote like 2,100 words for this screenplay. So without saying too much after that, subtitled Gotham Knight, I hope you guys enjoy it, and let's begin. So this takes place about a year after Justice League, unlike the Superman Metropolis one, which took place basically right after Justice League. So this begins in the beginning of December, so this whole movie takes place in December, and we start off with a bunch of criminals with red masks / hoods on. Yes, it's the Red Hood gang. Sorry, about to perform a heist at a Wayne Tech biotech lab. Batman though appears after, obviously, because they've now stolen what they took and they're running away from the scene of the crime. Batman appears with his new bat suit. Now, in the first movie, Batman had the somewhat traditional gray suit with the black bat on it, kind of akin to what he wore on the Justice League animated series. But in this one, it's more like kind of what he wore in the Tim Burton Batman '89. Obviously, it's not exactly like it, but it is in the sense where it has the yellow bat symbol with the black bat in it. Now, this bat signal is different than other bat signals because while, yes, it is there to attract attention to it, because obviously it's more padded there than anywhere else, so if people shoot him, he wants to be shot there. But also, the kind of the yellow part of it emits light. So yellow light, obviously, it could do that, but light in general, kind of like a bat signal that Commissioner Gordon uses later on for Batman. So it's basically there, to kind of not scare criminals, but to kind of basically show criminals he sees you and you have nowhere to go. So it's kind of like a warning system, actually, because Batman, after Justice League, isn't really covert anymore. He's publicly known. So, his days of kind of being an urban legend is over. But anyways, Batman appears, shining his bat signal chest, warning them to stop what they're doing and not to resist arrest. They proceed to run away from Batman, obviously to no avail. And he takes them out using a combination of manipulating the environment, such as ricocheting sound off objects, acrobatics, and obviously a well-placed net trap, because this is Batman we're talking about. He's 2 steps ahead of everybody. So at this moment, he contacts the authorities and proceeds to return to the Batcave. Now, when he calls the authorities, he calls Lieutenant Gordon, obviously Jim Gordon, who ends up becoming commissioner, not in this movie, but most likely later on, because I didn't have Gordon in the previous Batman one, which a lot of people were like confused about. They're like, "Where's Gordon at? Where's the cops at?" And just in case you never heard my explanation for that, Batman in the first Batman movie just became Batman, and in the process, he's kind of operating covertly. He's not really making his presence known, and also working with the cops in his mind initially is basically gonna kind of slow him down from doing it his own way. So that's the kind of mindset he has in there. And obviously in this one, as he's a much more public crime fighter, so to speak, he'll be much more lenient on working with the police and things like that. So back to the screenplay. He contacts Commissioner Gordon and the rest of the Gotham City Police Department and proceeds to return to the Batcave, which I introduced in this movie, wasn't in the first Batman one, but he kind of deems the Batcave as a necessity at this point because it's sort of his hub, and also it cloaks his presence from governments and also Argus, who tries to keep tabs on him, obviously, after the events of Justice League. And I'm going to try explaining stuff a little bit as it needs to be explained for the sake of the story. But if you want to know why Argus may want to keep tabs on Batman, listen to the Justice League screenplay. So moving on, Alfred then appears, getting on Bruce about how he has events to go to as Bruce Wayne during the daytime and morning, and he needs to rest for those. And Bruce, he reluctantly agrees because ever since he came back to Gotham, he's been working really hard to develop the Bruce Wayne persona. So in case he ever got himself into a position where people might think, hey, maybe Bruce Wayne's Batman, they wouldn't really connect the dots because they'd be like, oh, Bruce Wayne, he can never become Batman. So Batman, Bruce then goes through some crime reports and also reviews his Bruce Wayne schedule for the upcoming week before he goes to sleep. Now, on that list is the attendance that he has to do for the Haley Circus Performance in Gotham. And hopefully he's supposed to go with a date for a social image. And later on also, his kind of upcoming events is the Cobblepot Holiday Charity event. Now, we then see Bruce, obviously, like I said before, turn off the Bat computer and leave the Batcave to go get some sleep. And then after that, we cut to a few of the criminals, like 2 or 3, having escaped the net and returning to their boss, who's revealed to be Oswald Cobblepot. Now, if you don't know who Oswald Cobblepot is, I'm surprised, but that's the Penguin, basically. So we learn that the object of the crooks is to steal a compound that can replicate DNA of its host, being sought out for cloning purposes to perform crimes that would always lead to a dead end in evidence, because you could easily take the DNA of someone who's dead, or preferably the DNA of someone who's alive but already incarcerated, and when the police are doing forensics and they're investigating what's going on, it's going to be a dead end, because how are you going to prosecute someone that's either dead or already in jail? So Oswald plans to use this, though, beforehand in his upcoming charity event he's hosting to copy Bruce Wayne's DNA in order to kill Bruce Wayne and then take over Wayne Tech with the doppelganger, basically, to increase his wealth. Because if there's one thing about Cobblepot, it's that he loves money and getting more money. So Oswald, we learn, has been secretly taking over land in the Gotham Underground under the criminal alias the Penguin. Sorry if you hear my dog barking, he does that from time to time. So with his next target, though, it's Haley Circus, as this is advertised as their anniversary performance in Gotham, so it's kind of bound to bring in a lot more money than a regular circus performance would. At Wayne Manor the next morning, Bruce is, up and about training while Alfred goes over his day schedule again, just so he can make sure he knows it. And then Bruce works on, new gadgets and also improving gadgets, as he's not too pleased to learn, obviously, that 2 or 3 crooks escaped his net. Because, he's Batman, and that's... If people, basically, a big part of Batman is his image and intimidation, and also the fact that a lot of crooks, when they see Batman, they're pretty much like, oh, it's over, I'm done. But, if stuff like this happens, crooks are going to be much more rebellious and much more bold against Batman, because they're going to be like, oh, I can escape his stuff, or, stuff like that. So, seeing as it's almost noon, though, after, working on a bunch of gadgets, Bruce heads to the Wayne Tech building, where they inform him of the break-in into the biotech lab, with the primary object that was stolen being something called Project Clay. Now, this is a big problem. If you can't see what I'm doing here with the name of the thing, you must not know Batman's Rogues Gallery. But this is a problem because all the tests for Project Clay indicate it's not ready for testing, especially on organic substances in subjects, because they all turn into a clay-like material, as the compound isn't complete and it needs certain chemicals, because when it interacts with your body in the chemical reaction, it needs something to stabilize it. And they haven't found that yet, because obviously it's not ready for testing. They're still working on it. So Bruce then gets files on Project Clay and studies the work, to understand it much better, and hopefully to find potential uses that are potential people that might be interested in it due to the properties it has, or the properties that it's promising to have once it's completed. So later that night, Batman returns to the site where the net was. Obviously, the cops took the people down that didn't get free, but he inspects the material that was used to cut it, obviously using detective work. And it could be really cool here. We can see what type of technology Batman has, like we did in the first movie, but more so now as he's more experienced as Batman. And he finds out that the material used to cut the net was a tungsten blade with diamond tipping on the end of it. So obviously, if you don't know what tungsten is, it's pretty durable. And the diamond, obviously diamond's pretty durable too, but also expensive. Both of those materials are expensive. So Batman deducts that, basically using deductive reasoning and just simple common sense, that to have something like this, it must cost a small fortune. And also he thinks about the fact that these are basically common crooks, essentially. These weren't big, bosses or anything like that, no lieutenants. So if he's just handing these out to, the crooks, this person must be, whoever's behind this must be very wealthy. So this brings Batman to watch the richest people in Gotham City, for a while. Hopefully, to find out who's the most likely candidate, while also cracking down on more crime, and especially crime that the Red Hood gang commits. So a few nights later, Bruce attends the Haley Circus Performance, which showcases amazing performances from strongmen, trapeze artists, jugglers, knife throwers, the people that do things with the flame and the tigers, and etc. And obviously acrobats being the Flying Graysons. Now, in the middle of the performance of the Flying Graysons, a fire begins. We don't know exactly yet how the fire began, but many performers die in the fire, and also died trying to help people get safely out of the circus tent. At least I think in a circus nowadays they have one tent still, but I'm not sure. But for the sake of this, let's say they use the whole one tent thing still, and that burns down. A lot of people die from it. Now, one of the people that safely get free of it is a teenager, Richard Grayson. I don't call him Dick really in this, just out of sake, because his name's Richard, and I feel like if I say Dick, there'd be too many Dick jokes. And also, CJ is commonly also known as Richard, so this is kind of a little nod to CJ. Now, at the police station, Richard's kept safe, kind of in a protective program, because they don't know who burned the circus performance down yet, and why, and motive, stuff like that, especially because it was during the Flying Graysons performance. So Bruce Wayne eventually appears at the station because he was there, and he witnessed what occurred, and he talks to some cops about temporarily housing Richard via a protection program, as Wayne Manor is outside Gotham, so technically it's considered very safe. And also, this is Bruce Wayne's house, so security is very top-notch / Batman's house, so it's very top-notch. Now, Alfred drives Bruce and Richard back to the Wayne Manor, and Bruce and Richard talk a bit on the way there, and Bruce is really trying to help Richard deal with what just happened, as Bruce can sympathize with them. He went through a very similar thing when his parents were killed right in front of him. So, seeing the loss in Richard's eyes, Bruce really decides to make this case a top priority. And soon after that, when they're all asleep, Batman sneaks into the police station, hacking into all their databases that automatically feed information to the Batcave and the Batcomputer, especially regarding Red Hood activity and anyone with a lot of money that may have a criminal record or may be doing something suspicious that he could maybe hold as responsible and start a deeper investigation, because remember, Batman's a detective at the base of everything else. So back at Wayne Manor, Bruce spends some time with Alfred and Richard the following day, trying to help him feel more comfortable. And after a short while, Richard asks if Bruce has any training equipment that he may use to maintain his acrobatic skills, as sadly that's all he has left of his family to remember, the acrobatics and stuff like that, which is kind of sad, but you'll see how this fits in later. So Bruce then brings him to his training room, which I'm envisioning kind of like a Gold's Gym, if you've ever been into a Gold's Gym. But obviously it has much more better equipment than Gold's Gym does, especially considering Bruce Wayne has a lot of money, multi-billionaire, and also he's Batman. So his training room is probably very, very, it has everything essentially. So finding, Bruce, sees Richard, Richard goes to, look at everything to see what he could use to, keep up his acrobatics. And Bruce kind of thinks to himself, maybe he could use this to connect with him, because obviously Bruce Wayne's in good shape, and, obviously Richard Grayson's in good shape. He's a star acrobat, protege acrobat, prodigy, so to speak. But, you need to start with something to really help someone, and this is, I guess, in Bruce's mind, maybe where he could start off at. So back at Cobblepot, he finds a poor struggling actor named Basil Carlo to be his test subject for Project Clay. And Cobblepot then tells the Red Hood gang to steal a chemical from Ace Chemicals. A few chemicals, actually, not just one chemical. A few chemicals that are thought to maybe be able to stabilize the compound that belong to Ace Chemicals. So they go out to do that. And around the time when everyone's starting to rest, I'm assuming like 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m., Bruce gets an alert regarding an Ace Chemicals break-in. So Bruce sneaks into the Batcave, but Richard notices on the way there because he's not fully asleep yet. And, Bruce is really rushing to get there because obviously at this point, this is kind of personal to a degree to Bruce to really, find out what's going on. And also he's very worried because Project Clay, that's very dangerous to have. So he's not really paying too much attention, and he rushes throughout the manor, and out of curiosity, Richard follows him. So Richard watches Bruce go behind a grandfather clock into a secret passageway leading to the Batcave, and Bruce gets on his gear and drives off to Ace Chemicals in the Batmobile. Not sure if I introduced the Batmobile in the first Batman one, but if I didn't, he has Batmobile here. Not sure what I envisioned the Batmobile as of right now, but it's the Batmobile. Does what it needs to do. So, yeah, anyways, Bruce, goes to Ace Chemicals, and he realizes they're trying to get chemicals to stabilize Project Clay. So he, this is really important. And at Ace Chemicals, we see a small group of about 6 men, carrying a tank full of chemicals to a van, and they're going back to Ace Chemicals, taking more chemicals, kind of like full tanks, and bring them to this van. Now, after they get their second to last one, they send only 3 people to get the last one. So the rest of them just stay in the car or in the van ready to go. But as soon as those members go to get the tank, Batman appears and easily takes them all out because honestly they're common crooks essentially, and Batman is Batman. He went around the world training. One of the things was martial arts, among others, so they aren't really a challenge for him whatsoever. So while interrogating a member, their leader, at least a guy that appears to be their leader because he's wearing a cape and a bulkier mask, and if you read the comics you'll probably know who this is, enters firing a gun at Batman. Now Batman is able to, safely get away and hides in the shadows while crafting a strategy to take him out. Now this is one of the cool things about Batman that he has is, first off, his creativity, his ability to improvise on the spot, and his batarangs. So he throws special batarangs. I'm thinking about him using a batarang that you throw and it goes past the person and then comes back and it hits them kind of thing. So he does that. Obviously the person's like, oh, you missed me, ha ha ha, regular stupid ass villain, and it comes back and it hits them and it disarms them in the process, and then during that confusion Batman glides down, kicking him across the platform they're on, because obviously they're on a platform as this is Ace Chemicals, and Ace Chemicals has large vats of chemicals all across the floor of their facility. Now Batman, he has him, and the guy's begging Batman not to beat him. He's kind of begging for mercy, so to speak. And, Batman's like, who are you? Who's your boss? Who's making you do this? And he says the Penguin. He was like, the Penguin made him do it. Penguin made him, burn down Haley's circus. He doesn't want to die. Just let him go, please. And he has a family and yada, yada, yada. Not sure if he's telling the truth or not, but he's saying all this stuff, hopefully for Batman to let him go. Now, Batman tells him he won't kill him, but he will bring him to justice, as in, the police force. And, the guy tries hitting Batman because he wants to break free, but misses when Batman evades him, and he falls over the platform into a vat of chemicals below. Now Batman tries to catch him, but doesn't get there in time, and at that moment we hear a van screech. Obviously the van outside's leaving. So Batman turns around to go after the vat while contacting Lieutenant James Gordon. I can't remember if it's Jim or James. I think it's Jim though. But he tells Jim that, or I guess Lieutenant Gordon, I'm just going to say that because everyone can understand who I'm talking about easier. He tells Lieutenant Gordon that, who he's been working with quite a bit, so on the police force, about the thugs at Ace Chemical, the stuff with Haley's circus. Basically, he tells him the confession. And also, he tells him to start looking for anyone with the possible alias of the Penguin, especially in the criminal underground. So after that, he calls the Batcave, but instead of Alfred answering, he gets a response from Richard, which surprises him naturally. But not having time to waste, he tells Richard to search in the computer for anyone known, especially a criminal in Gotham known as the Penguin. Richard tells him there are no matches, so Batman tells him to wait for him in the training room and hangs up. So this is a really cool part we have here. Batman basically enters a car chase in the Batmobile with the people in the van. Obviously he catches up to them, or is catching up to them, but has to let them go when they throw a bomb into a building, causing a fire and obviously an explosion. So Batman, stops there, puts a tracer on them, and then goes save the people from the building and, help put out the fire the best he can before fire department comes. Sorry, I'm like, my word. After that's all done, he goes back to Wayne Manor, where he goes to the training room to talk to Richard. Now, he tells him he's not mad, but actually applauds his ability to follow him into the Batcave, even though, Bruce wasn't paying full attention, because he's not used to having someone else in Wayne Manor that doesn't know his secret, because it's just him and Alfred usually. Richard says he wants to help Bruce out because he heard what the guy was confessing, and he wants to find this Penguin person and get revenge essentially for killing his parents and killing all the circus performers there and basically ruining his life. Bruce says that's fine and it's natural for him to want revenge, but he can't get revenge, and also he has no training, and this isn't a joke. This isn't just a performance. This is life or death usually, going out there and against criminals, especially nowadays post Justice League. So Richard he tells him how it is. He says he can defend himself, and Haley Circus toured all around the world, especially for 3 years in Europe and Asia, where naturally he met people with martial arts background, and he learned many things from them, and also he's a natural acrobat, prodigy in that, and he asked Bruce for a batarang, which Bruce gave him, and he demonstrates his accuracy and precision with it, which he says is from practicing with the knife throwers. And this impresses Bruce, but Bruce still says, you need to train more first, because this isn't a game, and your training with the circus is fine, but it's not my training. So essentially they immediately start training, and we transition to Cobblepot again, who tells Carlo that the big day is coming up, as in the event, which he pushed back actually 2 more weeks near the end of December instead of like the middle, to further get donations, as he's now marketing it as a relief for victims of the circus incident. So as you can see, the Penguin, he kind of has a good business sense, but at the same time, he just wants money. He's kind of like a gold digger, but not a girl, and he has money already. So, yeah. Anyways, the following days/weeks, Richard trains really hard under Batman, and, the day of the charity event comes, and they're watching the news, and they see Gordon Godfrey on there, talking bad about superheroes. Now, if you want to know more about Gordon Godfrey, first off, listen to my Justice League screenplay, and then listen to the Superman Metropolis one. Now, Bruce changes the channel to Robin Hood, in the movie, saying Godfrey should stay in Metropolis with Lex, because if you didn't know, Lex's communications network stationed in Metropolis, Godfrey is there and he works there, and he's like the person. He's like the Anderson Cooper of Lex Luthor's communications service for news and stuff like that. So Bruce gets ready while Richard stays and watches Robin Hood with Alfred at Wayne Manor. And at the charity event, Bruce, he sees various people, obviously, of the upper class society, but one person in particular, not sure if upper class or not, he meets is a woman named Selena Kyle. Now, Selena grabs Bruce's attention, and, they're very flirtatious with each other, and they play off each other very well. The body language is all there, and obviously these two people are really good at it. Basically, smooth talking and stuff like that. Obviously, because Selena is secretly a thief, but we're not addressing that yet. So they develop that more, and eventually, they set a future date to go out together before Bruce is taken away, by Cobblepot, because Cobblepot says he wants to show Bruce a painting down the hall that he recently bought. Now, just so you guys don't get confused, Catwoman will not be appearing in this. So just so you know there, because I know a few people, when I introduce a character, they immediately think, if they have an alter ego, that's going to come out. No, I don't do it like that. I like developing stuff, and, I'm not drawing it out, but it has to feel organic when it comes out. You can't just be like, oh, here's this person, and then spontaneously they have their alter ego again, or they have their alter ego from comics. So while talking to Cobblepot, they're walking down this hall looking, Cobblepot supposedly is going to show him this painting. suddenly a group of Red Hood thugs appear armed, and they take Bruce, they mask his face down to an unknown location. Obviously Bruce determines by his footsteps and how he's walking and where he's going that this is basically downstairs in the basement. Now Bruce, when he's unmasked, he sees Basil Carlo just staring at him, kind of watching him. They kind of have a conversation where Carlo's trying to capture his mannerisms, his voice, etc. Because Carlo's a really good actor. He's just really poor, broke, and drug addiction. So think Trevor Slattery, kind of, from Iron Man 3, if that helps you. So Carlo eventually says he's ready, and he goes to an unknown room where we see kind of like a shadow where he's injected with, presumably, Project Clay. Now Bruce, in the meantime, is yelling, don't do this and seek medical help immediately. This is not the way to go because it's not stable. But Carlo doesn't listen to him, and he tells him that he's now Bruce Wayne, and to call him Mr. Wayne. And we see his face morph into Bruce Wayne. Really cool effects possibility. But now it's looking like Bruce Wayne, because he changed his appearance. He goes back up to the party. Now Bruce is obviously restrained, but this is Batman we're talking about too. So he is able to get out of the cuffs, and he is just waiting for the right moment to come out, because he doesn't want to cause any panic or anything like that. So we'll see how this develops when I get to it. So Carlo's doing a really good job impersonating Bruce Wayne when he goes back up to the party, until Selina Kyle goes back up to him and tries playing the game, flirting and stuff like that with him again. Now Carlo obviously isn't good at it, and Selina notices it, kind of wondering, is he okay? Now, one of the problems with Carlo's acting career, and one of the reasons why he's not really active in acting, is because he does not take self-criticism very well. So when Selina asks him if he's okay, he immediately thinks, oh no, I'm not doing a really good job. And that causes him to panic a little bit, with his heart rate increasing dramatically. And he leaves the room to go to the bathroom to cool off, but notices his face is starting to melt a little bit. Like he can't hold the appearance of Bruce Wayne that well right now, and it kind of looks like an ugly clay face. You see what I did there? Ugly clay face. And he's kind of panicking now because, like I said, he has some issues. And in a panic, he runs to Cobblepot, who he's demanding to know what's happening to him, why you can't maintain his appearance as Bruce Wayne. But since he's at the public event, obviously, Cobblepot plays stupid, which pisses off Carlo. And in that moment, Carlo punches, he kind of enlarges his fist a little bit, and he punches Cobblepot across the room, which starts causing panic, because everyone sees that and it's like, oh my gosh, you have a supernatural freak here. So, like I just said, this causes panic across the charity event, and this is when Bruce decides to make his reappearance, and he calls Richard and tells him to show up with the gear. Gear meaning the bat suit. Now, when Richard arrives, he arrives with the bat suit and everything, but also his own suit. Instead of being black, gray, and yellow as the kind of color palette, he has basically the New 52 Dick Grayson suit. If you've seen that, it's pretty cool. It's red, green pants, kind of armored up a bit with the yellow and black cape as always. And he says his codename is Robin, after Robin Hood. Now, in case you're wondering, after Robin Hood, that makes no sense. Originally, Robin got his name, the name Robin for Batman's sidekick was inspired by Robin Hood. And that's why originally Robin had, the chainmail underwear thing, because it was supposed to be, kind of a nod to Robin Hood, because Robin Hood traditionally had chainmail. So there you go, history lesson in comics and also other history. So Bruce doesn't bother commenting because this is like a superhuman crisis right now, and he puts on his Batman gear and calls Lieutenant Gordon to, first off, call Star Labs to tell him to get a containment thing ready for Carlo, because he's predicting that this will turn out just like every other organic subject, which they'll just kind of become a clay mess. And also to get Gotham Police Department here to A, help people get out, and B, in case something happens, obviously to be armed and ready to take down Carlo. And also because at this point he realizes Cobblepot is the Penguin, so he tells Lieutenant Gordon so they can come and arrest him. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of not exposition, but a lot of things coming out into the light, so to speak. So also he calls Alfred though to inform Alfred on the scenario and tell Alfred to send the Batjet over and also hook up the Batjet with, a hook, basically. And you'll see why later. It's very creative. I really like how he does this. And if you're still listening to this, thank you. I know it's kind of long, bordering on like half an hour now. So let's continue on with it, and hopefully I can wrap this up somewhat in the next few minutes. So Batman and Robin, they appear on the scene, and they try talking down to Carlo, try talking to Carlo to calm him down, because the more he panics, the less he can really retain his appearance, so to speak, and the more he becomes like a Clayface monster, like akin to how he appears in the comics as Clayface. So also at the same time, while Batman is talking to Carlo, trying to, talk him down and get him to relax, Robin is helping people get out, akin to how his parents helped people get out of the tent. So you see how that's going on there? Now, in the process, Cobblepot, seeing how, his charity event is a disaster, pretty much, he picks up a gun, tries shooting Carlo, and yells at Carlo, says how, he's not even an actor or person anymore, he's just a stupid Clayface he hired. And this obviously pisses off Carlo even more, which, causes Batman to try, getting Carlo's attention again and try talking to him. But Carlo's so mad at this point, he hits Batman, and he goes after Cobblepot. Now, Robin, as much as he wants Cobblepot to be dead, does the right thing and saves Cobblepot, restraining him, on a post nearby, so, basically Carlo wouldn't kill him with that, that incoming attack he was going for. If you just try envisioning all of this, basically, pretty cool fight scene about to commence. So, Alfred, tells Batman that the Batwing is inbound, so to speak. It will be there in like a minute or so. So Batman tells Robin that they need to distract Carlo and, just basically stall time for the Batwing to get there. Robin's asking, what's the plan? And Batman says just to do what he says and go downstairs, look for a bunch of chemicals, because obviously when Bruce was down there, he realized the chemicals were stored there too. Not very smart of Cobblepot. But he tells him to search for two specific chemicals, ammonium nitrate and potassium nitrate. Now, if you know anything about chemistry, you'll know what these do, essentially, but, obviously it's instrumental in taking down Clayface. So Robin goes down to get those chemicals while Batman evades Carlo's attacks, and also we could really see cool gadgets that Batman has. That's part of the reason everyone loves Batman, such as explosive batarangs in particular, to, kind of slow down Carlo and obviously take his attention even more. Now, Lieutenant calls Batman again, telling him that the Gotham City Police Department is there and Star Labs is getting a containment cell ready, where Robin appears back up with Batman, or to Batman, telling him that he has the chemicals, the Batwing's almost there by now, and Carlo is going apeshit, pretty much. He's just attacking everything throughout the mansion that Cobblepot lives in, which he was holding the charity event in. And Robin, he uses acrobatics to dodge Carlo, and Batman tells him, when the Batwing gets here, because Batman leaves in the Batwing, to distract Carlo more and, to be careful, basically, because this is Robin's first outing as Robin. So, very potentially accident prone. And also, if I'm kind of confusing you with how I'm saying this stuff, just let me know in the comments. I'll easily explain it to you clearly. So, Batman leaves in the Batwing to go do what he was planning, and Robin continues to evade Carlo while teasing him a bit, akin to how Spider-Man teases his villains, because, he's thinking in a performance state of mind, when you're teasing someone who's performing, it's really hard for them to focus, and especially if you just basically have their attention in general, it's hard for them to focus on their performance. So in Robin's mind, if he can mess with Carlo enough, Carlo won't either be able to keep his composition for his, clay body, so to speak, and also he'll just be really sloppy with his attacks in general, making them easier to dodge. So he calls Carlo Clayface, which is, I'm just going to call him Clayface from now on. And Clayface obviously doesn't like this and goes super apeshit trying to attack Robin. And we get a really cool fight scene here. Kind of think of how they did Sandman and Spider-Man 3, but obviously different and better because this is Clayface. So, he just goes off on them saying how, no one ever believes in him and, he's a good actor and, he could prove it and stuff like that. But first he has to, kill everybody here because, they just make his life miserable and they're the reason why, he's, homeless and poor and not a working actor. And basically all his little personal issues are coming out. And also, drugs. But eventually Carlo does hit Robin up against a wall and he's about to suffocate him until the Batwing blasts the ceiling/roof off the mansion, revealing what the Batman went to get with the Batwing, which is a water tower. Now, Batman then drops this a bunch of the water from the water tower on Clayface into the mansion, while telling Robin through their comlink to throw the chemicals he took. These are like big vats that he brought up too, to open those and let the chemicals go all over Carlo. So Robin takes out his wingdings, or I guess batarangs, not sure which one he'd call them yet, but you understand what I'm talking about. And he basically tears into the tanks of the chemicals, so they just go all over Carlo. Now, if you know what ammonium nitrate does and potassium nitrate does, basically, especially for water, it cools it down a lot. Now, Batman explains what's happening afterwards, but basically what happens is, due to Carlo's mutated state as Clayface, a lot of his body is made up of a lot more water than a natural, human's body is. And the chemical reaction between the chemicals freezes him. So you see science all playing a part here. Just like in Superman defeats Metallo with science. So Robin, he gets a bit cold, but he survives easily. And this kind of shows that he does need more training with Batman, even though he is really skilled already. So, wrapping up this film, the Gotham City Police Department / Star Labs, they take Cobblepot and Clayface away, and we see Bruce go out with Selina a bit too. Not like The Dark Knight Rises, but they go out, have some lunch, stuff like that. Social image, remember that. So a few nights later, now Christmas, we see Batman talking to Amanda Waller regarding the Clayface incident, as she thinks Batman should have called Argus to deal with it, but Batman says Gotham is his territory, and Merry Christmas, as he's about to leave as a police siren is heard in the background. And Robin also appears next to him, telling him, what the crime is in progress. And Waller tells Batman, why don't you take a break? It is Christmas after all. But Batman reminds Waller that crime doesn't take a holiday, and him and Batman Batman and Robin go off into the night, the Gotham night. See what I did there? Yeah. They go off into the night, and that's where the movie ends. So I know it's kind of long. I apologize in advance for that, if that bothers you. For everyone that stayed for the whole screenplay, thank you. If you like this, the next one's going to be The Flash, so look forward to that. It's going to be the first Flash screenplay since The Flash's introduction in the Justice League screenplay. So if you want to know how I do The Flash's origins before the Flash screenplay, listen to the Justice League screenplay. I hope you guys liked it. Comment, like, subscribe below. Tell me what you want to see in the future. I've already written these, but still, it's fun to see what you guys kind of want. And also, if you liked it, what parts you liked in general. Do you like the not so dark and brutal Batman screenplay, or do you want me to go really dark again, like The Dark Detective? So, yeah, this is Hybrid, and I'll see you guys later.